This is the power of the work that we do at Hope for Dystonia. It is the power to understand the patterns that are behind the symptoms so that you can rewire what's behind them. That is what we do in the Academy. Hello and welcome to Hope for Dystonia. My name is Shmuel. If you're here, I assume that you're struggling with dystonia in some form, or maybe you have symptoms that are reminiscent of dystonia and you don't have a diagnosis. Either way, you are in the right place. And the second thing that I want you to know is that you can do this, right? Just in the same way that your brain has learned a dysfunctional pattern, it can learn a new functional one. And today I want to tell you two stories of two people who, through the Hope for Dystonia method, were able to get their lives back, just the way I did. And we're going to be talking about Dylan and Sarah. These are not their real names. I'm going to be changing all kinds of details so these individuals are not recognizable. But these are success stories that I hope will inspire you to believe and trust and know that you can do this too, no matter how far gone you think you are. And so let's start with Dylan. Dylan was stuck with his head over here, and the cervical dystonia was really severe and debilitating. And he had developed this cervical dystonia after wearing for a really long time these invisible aligners for his teeth. And if you've followed Hope for Dystonia for a while, you already know that the brain couldn't care less about the geometric alignment of the teeth and how pretty they look. The brain wants the teeth to guide the jaw into a position that allows the condyles, the ends of the jaw bones, to apply symmetrical pressure on the two temporomandibular joints and the cranial nerves that travel in this area, because those are centers of proprioception. Those are centers that allow the body to understand where it is in space. And the cranial nerves in these areas really determine how we perceive ourselves, our bodies in space, and how much muscle tone is needed on one side versus the other. And these invisible retainers had shifted Dylan's teeth in such a way that they looked really pretty, but actually they were leading the jaw to press excessively on one side compared to the other. And Dylan had tried everything, neuroplasticity training and hyperbaric chambers and Botox and all kinds of dentists that had promised all kinds of things through appliances that they created according to a certain model that they had learned somewhere. And nothing had worked. And so Dylan came to Hope for Dystonia really skeptical, right, that anything could work. But he quickly understood why Hope for Dystonia is different. And in the Academy, if you decide to give it a try, you'll see immediately that the whole first section of the Academy is dedicated to helping you understand your own cranial nerves, right? How your brain is firing these really crucial pathways in your head and neck, and how your occlusion, the way you bite down on your teeth, determines the distribution of muscle tone and how these cranial nerves are firing. And so the main difference between everything that Dylan had tried before and the Hope for Dystonia Self-Healers Academy, and in his case it was the one-on-one, which was the format of Hope for Dystonia before, but the difference between what he had tried before and Hope for Dystonia was that Hope for Dystonia is built to empower you to understand your own nervous system and create new patterns for yourself, right? So you don't have to hand over your sovereignty to somebody else. So what Dylan was able to do was understand the 4 quadrants. And the 4 quadrants are really key to Hope for Dystonia, to the Academy. And in short, in brief, in synthesis, what the 4 quadrants are all about are recognizing that we can divide the occlusal pressure, right? So how much pressure the jaw places on the upper teeth, into 4 quadrants: front, back, left, and right. And these 4 quadrants correspond to the 4 quadrants in the neck and to 4 quadrants in the eyes. And so Dylan was able to practice the cranial quadrant balancing, which is a key exercise in the Academy. And it is something that you can check out for free if you go for the free trial, the free preview of the Hope for Dystonia Self-Healers Academy. I'm going to be leaving a link down below. And the link is to the roadmap. It's the framework that we use to kind of give you a taste of what is possible. And from the roadmap, you'll be able to check out the free trial of the Self-Healers Academy and the cranial quadrant balancing in there as well. And so with the cranial quadrant balancing, with the meditations, with the deep embodiment that we teach at Hope for Dystonia, Dylan was able to initially flirt with a new pattern that says, okay, instead of having all of my pressure in the back right quadrant, I can learn to distribute it more evenly. And from that initial flirting, Dylan was able to move on to more deeply embodying this, to go to his dentist and say, can you please adjust the appliance? Not according to your ideas, but according to the feedback that I receive from my nervous system in real time, so that I can be more and more stable in my neck. And little by little, that new pattern became the default, right? And so Dylan was not struggling over here anymore. He was back to center, and he was confident again when he was giving presentations, and he was confident when he was going on dates, and his life had changed. Not because somebody did some magic to him, but because he understood how to take his own healing into his own hands. Okay? So that is the first example, Dylan. And I'm using this example, which is a simplified one, to tell you about deep embodiment, right? And the power of deep embodiment to help you really understand that you can learn a new pattern in your cranial nerves, and you can find what really helps with the simple act of listening, right? Listening to your body. So the second example that I want to tell you about is Sarah. And Sarah is a very busy and very accomplished professional. She does a million things in a day. And in fact, she learned to keep herself busy in this way because that is what was valued when she was little, right? So the love that she received from her parents that did their very best, and they were wonderful parents, was very conditional. And it's not her parents' fault. Their parents grew up this way as well. But Sarah was a bit different than some of her siblings and other people in her family. She was very sensitive as a child, and she really learned and internalized some of these messages to an extreme degree, right? So, oh, okay, you want me to succeed and accomplish in order for you to love me? Great, I will go absolutely, 1,000% on everything that I do, and I will not rest a single minute. And this got old at a certain point for her nervous system, right? Because she lived to such a degree of chronic sympathetic activation that the nerves in her face began to fire in patterns of chronic bracing that she had a hard time letting go of. And she came to Hope for Dystonia when these patterns began expressing themselves as blepharospasm, right? So her eyelids would stay shut. And this was particularly kind of pronounced and particularly strong when she was around people. And as you can imagine, this was very difficult for someone like her who had such a long to-do list every day. And so we learned all kinds of exercises that helped her reconnect with the eyelids and with the face when it felt like the eyelids and the face had a life of their own. And that was helpful. But really, the exercises in the face, right, that were dealing with the nitty-gritty of how she was using the nerves and muscles in her face were not touching the heart of this, right? And the heart of this for her was the software that she was using when she was showing up in the world, right? And the software that she was using was a software that said, I am fundamentally bad and unworthy until proven otherwise. And I go about what I do with a secret, semi-conscious agenda that says I need to prove that I am good enough. And if I don't succeed, then it means I don't deserve to live. And it sounds harsh, but that is actually how the subconscious speaks to a lot of us when we've internalized some of these messages from childhood. And it's important to point out that Sarah did not identify as having childhood trauma or developmental trauma or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. But really, these softwares from childhood, the ways that she had learned to survive, were really making it hard for her to function as an adult. And so what shifted everything for Sarah was learning to be able to work with her inner child, right? And learn to speak with her with the eyes and the voice and the body language and so on of a ideal mother that loved little Sarah unconditionally. And through this work that I call embodied attachment integration, Sarah was able to rewire the internal software that really governed her life. And she was able to live more and more from a place of unconditional worthiness. It was hard at first. She had to really catch herself when she was getting into the trance of busyness and unworthiness. But she learned to do it. And she learned to create a secure base within herself from which she could live. And she learned to create moments of rest and moments of parasympathetic relaxation that were mixed into the moments of sympathetic activation throughout her day. And she learned to really have a relationship with her ideal mother and to receive exactly the messages that she needed. And that changed everything for Sarah. And the change was so much bigger than just the dystonia. The dystonia helped her heal as a person. It helped her grow as a person. And so this is the power of the work that we do at Hope for Dystonia. It is the power to understand the patterns that are behind the symptoms so that you can rewire what's behind them. That is what we do in the Academy. And so if this speaks to you, no pressure, but there's a roadmap waiting for you in the comments, in the description. A roadmap that gives you a taste of what's possible. And you can sign up for a free preview of the Academy so that you can understand if this is for you. And If you feel called to take your own healing into your own hands, if you understand that dystonia is a way for your body to call you back home to yourself so that you can live from a place of greater regulation, of greater self-compassion and self-attunement, then you belong in the Academy. And whether this seems to be the path for you or not, you can 1000% do this, right? You can get better. So that being said, thank you for your attention and much love to you. See you in the next one. Bye.